I look around at all of your faces, and I am pretty confident in saying that 100 years from now, everyone in this room will be dead and largely forgotten. Okay, there may be the odd straggler clutching onto a Zimmer frame, but you get my point. Yeah, this is one of those talks. 100 years ago, there were 450 million people on this planet. How many of them do you know of in any meaningful detail? Their names, their hopes, their dreams, what they did with their time. How many of them do you think have been completely forgotten already? Just think of your grandparents, your great-grandparents. How many of you can speak about your great-grandparents for more than 5 minutes? It's embarrassing. Our great-grandchildren will live really different lives in a very different world. They will be genetically and cybernetically enhanced. They will be playing biodigital jazz in ways that we can barely comprehend. They will be far more interwoven with the infrastructure around them. They will be better than we are. They will have more sophisticated moral compasses. They will be better educated. They will be better guardians of the biodiversity on this planet. But they will be just as preoccupied in the largely inconsequential happenings in their day-to-day lives as we are today, and they in turn will be forgotten. However, there is something really extraordinary that we share with them. One could argue that over the coming few hundred years, it will be a more significant period of time than any time in the distant past, sure, but also any time in the distant future. Let's start with the past. Imagine you are reading through the Book of Us, the book of Homo sapiens, where each page in this book represents 500 years of our history. This book has been boring. It was 300 pages of not very much at all. Then, tentatively, we began exploring in nomadic tribes. Agriculture and civilization didn't find its footing until page 390. We hit the Iron Age on 395. Gunpowder turned up on 398. That was interesting. But the last sentence, in the last paragraph of page 400, today, these beings interlinked themselves like some sort of superorganism, aircraft, the internet. And they started flinging themselves and their robots out into space, onto the moon, onto other planets. Holy flip! This book has just exploded into life. What's on page 401? It's scary. We have become a technological species, and there is a rapidly growing divide between our technological maturity and societal maturity, between the power that we now hold and our ability to wield it responsibly. It's scary. The future of humanity has two futures, and it is going to be dictated in the coming few hundred years. So I'm going to talk to you about the future. Future number one, we do something stupid and we go extinct. It could be something subtle. We saturate our local space environment with debris, rendering the space industry largely unfeasible. We are locked to the planet. It's a zero-sum game. We destroy ourselves. If not the first time, perhaps after a couple of dark ages, or some natural extinction event takes us out. Then, the other life on this planet continues to grow, to evolve and thrive without us. And technological intelligence does not reappear on time. In 1 billion years, the sun will be hotter, and the average surface temperature of this planet will be sitting at around 50 degrees Celsius. Water will have largely evaporated, and life will be extinguished. We are 4.5 billion years through the 5.5 billion year history of life on Earth. To put that into the context of a human life, we're in our late 60s, pushing into our 70s. There was this super volcano, some asteroid nearly took us out at one point, but we've had a good innings and, we're on our way out. And then, like clockwork, our star, the sun, will extinguish itself in about 8 billion years. Stars are the engines of life, and without one, there is none. Future number 2, it doesn't need to end here. As you all know, there are hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy and hundreds of billions of galaxies around us. Sure, it all seems ridiculously, inconceivably far away and large. If we redirected our fastest spacecraft to our nearest neighboring star, the Parker Probe, it would take 9,000 years to make that 25 trillion mile journey. But even with today's technology, if we wanted to, we could accelerate a spacecraft to a couple of hundred times the speed of the Parker Probe, and suddenly that 9,000-year journey is condensed into 45 years. And even this is really conservative for what we could achieve over the coming few centuries. I mean, to put things into context, just bear in mind, this was the closest thing we had to a space program 100 years ago. We were barely in the air. If you ask these guys, what's the space program going to look like in 100 years? They'd say something like, what's a space program? Because that's how they talked. If you started talking to them about astronauts and space stations and robots on other planets, they would give you a funny look. But the reality is, over the coming centuries, if we start sending spacecraft out in all directions, we will have not just spread, to a few dozen star systems around us over the coming couple thousand years. We will have spread to 200,000 star systems in a couple of thousand years. That is not a long time. That's 50 generations. That's 50 people down your family tree. This is the future they could have. Just think of the different forms of life, civilization, different ways of being that are possible for these people. Just let that sit with you for a moment. And let's stretch that out to 1 million years. That's the entire galaxy. And to 1 billion years, when the star in this system becomes just a little bit too hot to sustain life on this planet, we're not talking a couple 100,000 stars or a single galaxy. Life will have spread to 200 trillion star systems in our nearest 50,000 galaxies. It's just inconceivable. We can't think on these scales. We're no good at long-term thinking. We can't deal with huge numbers. We're terrible at exponential growth rates. But this is what hangs very precariously in the balance. It is we that will decide whether or not we fade into nothingness or whether we spread. Which begs the question, where is everyone? We look up at the night sky and we see just no signs of technological intelligence. Okay, we've only been looking for a couple of generations, seriously, and our instruments are really quite limited. But you think there would be a hint somewhere. There are many hypotheses for why we see no intelligence in the universe. And I'll circle around one and a few variations of that one, the Great Filter. One variation is that we're amongst the first. The universe has been a chaotic environment, but it's been stabilizing over time. And it's now stable enough to allow for life to evolve into something like us. And as such, we're amongst the first, and that's why we don't really see anybody else out there. A variation on this is that perhaps there are great filters in the evolution to technological intelligence that are really hard to overcome. It took life 1 billion years to be seeded here after the formation of the planet. Perhaps the conditions required for the seeding of life are extremely rare. It then took 2 billion years for that life to increase in complexity from single-celled to multi-celled organisms. Perhaps technological intelligence is an extremely rare avenue for natural selection to venture down. And the final variation that I'll present, perhaps we're in trouble. Perhaps technological intelligence is so deeply incompatible with life that it is in itself a swift, reliable form of extinction, a natural extinction event in itself. Civilizations rise and fall. Do not assume that our future is just going to be a steady cadence of progress. We have not been given any guarantees that the Minoans, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, great civilizations of the past were not given. What we do have that they did not have is an exquisite set of instruments with which to completely extinguish ourselves. It is down to us. Our future will be dictated in the coming few centuries. Do we fade into nothingness, or do we become an ever-present and evolving feature of the universe? I'm Ash Dovje. I come from unlikely circumstances in a very humble beginning in rural southern Africa. Through a series of events and decisions, I now run a space technology company. We provide networks of satellites for various applications: communications, Earth observation, agricultural management, wildfire monitoring, space debris tracking. I created this company to advance the growth and the acceleration of the space industry, just to hopefully push us a little gentle nudge towards that potential long future. But with modern governments rarely spending more than 1,000th of their budget on the space sector, we have a long way to go. It is down to us. Government budgets are largely dictated by taxpayers. The space industry is deeply interwoven into our lives, far more than people realize, and into the way that we run our civilizations. But it needs to become a central pillar of humanity in the coming centuries if we are to have any hope at realizing that fantastically amazing long future. Thank you.